Welcome to Sky Sports Fan Club, your chance to get involved in football's biggest talking points. Jay Bothroyd is here for the next 2 hours, but we're going to head straight to Wembley. Thomas Tuchel's England squad for the World Cup qualifiers against Serbia and Albania has just been announced, and we can get the details from our football correspondent, Rob Dawson. Rob, normally I'd ask you what the top story is, but there's about 5 big stories in this squad.
Yeah, there are, Tom. That's absolutely right. And let's put this into context, OK? This feels a really important squad announcement by Thomas Tuchel because, including these 2 matches, these 2 World Cup qualifiers they've got this month, there are only 4 international matches before Thomas Tuchel has to name his World Cup squad. So the feeling we had around the camp and around Tuchel was that if you're fit and playing for your club right now, but you're not in this squad right now, it's a long haul to make it to the World Cup squad in 6 months' time. And the big headlines are Jude Bellingham in, Phil Foden in. Both of them recalled, as we thought might be the case. We certainly expected Jude Bellingham to be recalled. And remember, that's a significant one because he's missed the last 2 England camps. He missed the one in September because he was undergoing shoulder surgery, but he was fit and playing for Real Madrid and available last month. But Thomas Tuchel decided to leave him out, and that created an awful lot of headlines. Now, the England head coach said he'd done that to try and keep the squad from September, who'd done so well for him, intact as much as possible for the meeting in October. No, he couldn't use that reasoning this time. And had he not included Jude Bellingham, I think it would have been a huge, huge story. But Bellingham is back. He's absolutely flying for Real Madrid. No surprises that he's back in. But it's an equally big headline, probably an even bigger headline, that having missed the last 3 England camps, having not played for England since March, Phil Foden has done enough to convince Thomas Tuchel he deserves a place in this England squad. And in terms of the number 10s, it's Morgan Gibbs-White who misses out at the expense of Phil Foden there. So those are the 2 big headlines in. Let me tell you about everybody else, because there's a real surprise call-up for Bournemouth midfielder Alex Scott. Now, nobody was talking about him in the build-up to this international camp. He's in the international setup with Thomas Tuchel for the first time, and so is Adam Wharton. Now, there's been a huge clamour for Wharton to be involved. Tuchel has talked about how much he admires him, but he's never picked him. He's never selected him, even when he's been fit. So technically, with Elliot Anderson keeping his place in the squad, that's 3 pretty young defensive midfield options that Thomas Tuchel has got in this camp. You get the feeling he's going to look at all 3 of them. And then in terms of the other players that are out, a big surprise at left-back, you have to say. Miles Lewis-Skelly, who's been a feature of England under Thomas Tuchel, misses out. He's not playing an awful lot for Arsenal, of course. He's missed out to 2 other players at Arsenal. He's only been coming off the bench as he did in the Champions League in midweek. He's just not playing enough football, I think you have to say, for Thomas Tuchel to be convinced that he's worthy of a place in the England squad right now. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who's had limited England time but been involved in the last couple of camps, he misses out as well in favour of Alex Scott and Adam Wharton that we've just mentioned in the midfield. And all that talk about Danny Welbeck in the build-up to this, and might he be included? I told you I suspected he might not be. No, there's no Danny Welbeck, who turns 35 later this month. It's not a recall for him after 7 years out from the England setup. So some big headlines there. And as I say, it feels a really significant England squad that Thomas Tuchel has announced today. Yeah, it does. We do want to get you on Anthony Gordon in a moment, all right, because he went off injured in midweek. But just tell us a little bit more about Alex Scott, because you rightly said you hadn't heard his name mentioned, neither had anyone here either. So in terms of shocks, how big is this compared to since Tuchel's come in? Is this the biggest shock since Tuchel's come in? I think it's a huge shock, yeah. I mean, all of the clamour had been for Adam Wharton to get his chance in the England midfield, having been overlooked by Thomas Tuchel up to this point. Tuchel had said he really admires the player, but he wasn't selecting him. And it was Elliot Anderson who was called into the England squad. And let's be honest, has been absolutely outstanding for England in the 4 matches he's played. He was man of the match, was Elliot Anderson, in his first 2 England internationals. He's absolutely burst onto the scene. And so we started to think, OK, maybe he's the man for Thomas Tuchel. Maybe that's that anchoring midfield role that we expect Thomas Tuchel to go with. But then he's thrown in Adam Wharton this time, and he's also thrown in Alex Scott, the 22-year-old midfielder, young and up-and-coming at Bournemouth, been very, very impressive for Bournemouth this season, you have to say, and them getting up to the top 3 of the Premier League table. But we didn't see it coming, and you get the impression that this is Thomas Tuchel saying, OK, let's put all 3 of them in together there. Let's put Elliot Anderson in, let's put Adam Wharton in, let's put Alex Scott in. Let's see how they are around the camp. And it could be a major opportunity for all 3, but it could be make or break for all three as well, because we certainly didn't see Alex Scott being included in this squad. Nobody was predicting that.
Rob, I'm a bit surprised to see that Danny Welbeck isn't in the squad with his goals and his performances this season so far. Obviously, Watkins is not in there either. Do you think it's a bit of a worry for Thomas Tuchel? Because when England go to the World Cup, if Harry Kane gets injured, I mean, the only recognised striker there that can play there is Rashford, and he doesn't like playing there.
Well, that's a really fair point. And I'm really surprised Ollie Watkins isn't included in this squad. That's a big blow. What I was talking about in the build-up to this was whether it be Ollie Watkins or Danny Welbeck. And the impression I got was that Welbeck wouldn't get the nod, and indeed he hasn't done. But he's England's best-performing striker, other than Harry Kane right now. He scored 6 Premier League goals for Brighton this season, way ahead of everybody else. Ollie Watkins has only managed 1 for Aston Villa, which is presumably why he's paid the price in not making this squad. But yeah, he's only got Harry Kane as a first choice and recognised number 9 in this squad. And I think that is because he expects Marcus Rashford to be versatile enough to play down the middle if Harry Kane isn't available. But you just wonder why Thomas Tuchel hasn't looked at the other options now, because dare we say it, if Harry Kane gets an injury between now and next summer, England have to pick another striker. They have to go with somebody else. And he hasn't got a lot of options to look at. And he certainly hasn't got many options in this particular squad, with only Harry Kane as the only striker there. Look, I'm not surprised Welbeck's not in. There's no doubt he's in extraordinary form. He's a brilliant talent. But he turns 35 next month. He hasn't played for England for 7 years. So whilst there was a lot of talk and clamour for him to be involved, which I totally understand, I'm not surprised that he isn't involved. And I think you have to realise that Thomas Tuchel is selecting these squads now on a basis of pedigree mixed with form. And what I mean by that is he wants England's biggest players and best players to be involved, and they get extra credit in the bank, if you like, compared with the players that are banging form now who perhaps haven't performed, if ever, for England or much for England in recent times. But then you get the contradiction of Alex Scott and Adam Wharton. So it's difficult to see the thread here of what the England manager's thinking, and it's going to be a fascinating news conference when he talks to us at 11 o'clock. We'll bring that to you live on Sky Sports, because we've got, as ever, some really key questions for the head coach.
I think the reason why Alex Scott is in there and Wharton and Anderson is because they're that kind of defensive midfielder that can play balls in between the lines to the likes of Declan Rice, Foden, Bellingham, whoever it may be in that attacking midfield position. But I think they're there on merit, they've been performing, and again, it's like that kind of, for Arsenal, that Zubimendi kind of player that can play them tidy balls forward early. And I think that's the reason why they're all in there.
I think you're absolutely right. What I can't quite understand is why Adam Wharton, who's exactly that player you've just described, has been overlooked by Thomas Tuchel up till this point, and why he's decided now, with 4 internationals to go before the World Cup, now's the time to bring Adam Wharton in and have a look at him. Now's the time to bring Alex Scott in and have a look at him. It feels a bit late to me, and I suspect when he speaks here in less than an hour, Thomas Tuchel will tell us, well, look, we've qualified now, so I've got the freedom to look at players. I'm not sure I buy that, if I'm honest with you, because Adam Wharton has been knocking on England for a long time now, and if he'd been included in this squad, there would have been no surprises. And you think, OK, he's going to look at Elliot Anderson, he's going to look at Adam Wharton. Alex Scott is the wild card here that we didn't see thrown into the mix, and he's going to have all 3 of them to look at. And so he's got a plethora of options in that defensive midfield role in this squad, and yet 1 central striker in Harry Kane. So it does feel a little bit unbalanced, and Thomas Tuchel's going to have to explain why that is for us.
Do you think that O'Reilly starts for England? Because he's been fantastic this season for Man City. And you look at the squad, yes, Spence can play left-back, but you have to, in my opinion, I think you have to go with O'Reilly as the left-back now.
Well, Burn's been playing left-back almost every week.
I think it'd be really interesting to see how we use
out.
him. Well, exactly right. I think it's a really interesting one, because O'Reilly scored his first goal, didn't he? His first Premier League goal at the weekend as well, and he's absolutely bringing with confidence. Absolutely bringing with.
Rob, there, as you can see, we're talking about the left-back area there. Well, I mean, in fact, let's pick up on that then. So I mentioned Dan Burn, you mentioned Jed Spence, but you think that Nico O'Reilly might actually get a run. There's no Miles Lewis-Skelly, he's not selected, and Lewis Hall has been injured. He's back now, and you'd think that he is, well, obviously a contender as well. But in that squad, do you see O'Reilly as being the first choice?
I see him as being the first choice. I mean, as much as Dan Burn's been fantastic, I like him. He's very versatile. Like you said, he can play centre-back. He's great on set pieces. in both boxes. But I think the way England will play is exactly what O'Reilly is. He's solid, he's comfortable on the ball, he gets up and down the pitch. I mean, I think his natural position is as a midfielder, but he's gone into left back a bit like Miles Skelly, and he's made that position his own. He's like, you know, who can really, you know, you've got Gvardiol, who is, I know Gvardiol's playing in the centre of defence right now for Man City, but I think he's earned that spot on merit. And now I just look at that position for England. You know, before we was blessed with England left backs and full backs, but now they're scarce, and I think he's the guy for the job.
Well, let's get back to Rob Dawes, because I think we've got him again now. Rob, just before we get to, I do want to ask about Anthony Gordon, but before we speak to you about it, let's hear what Eddie Howe said about him this morning.
We don't think it's a serious injury, but we're going to get him scanned, and we're awaiting the results.
So it sounds like he won't be available on Sunday.
Yeah, I think there's every chance he might miss out on Sunday, but you know, we give him every opportunity to be fit.
Is there a chance he could be involved for England?
Relaxed about that, Keith. To be honest, it'll all be done with, you know, England's blessing in terms of whether he's fit or not fit. We'll work together with them to try and find the right solution for Anthony.
Yeah, as we were hearing from Eddie Howe there, Rob, Jay was, I think, what did you say there, Jay? He's not playing, did you say?
Who?
Gordon.
I mean, I don't think he's going to play. If he's going for a scan to see how he'll be on Sunday, I definitely don't think he'll be in that England squad playing. Unless he can play 90 minutes, I don't think he'll be in the England squad, because it sounds like, yeah, a niggle is a muscle injury to me. I just don't think he'll play.
I'm surprised he's in the squad, I've got to be honest.
Yeah.
I fully expected Anthony Gordon to miss out, because he's come off in the last 2 Premier League matches for Newcastle in the first half. Well, one was in the first half at the weekend, and before that he came off at half-time with the same problem, a hip problem, which has dogged him a little bit. So I can't see that England would want to jeopardise that, and certainly Eddie Howe wouldn't want to jeopardise that. But I think it speaks to how important he's been for England recently and how well he's played. It felt on the left wing as though Anthony Gordon and Marcus Rashford had sewn the 2 left-wing spots up. But I think now, with Phil Foden coming back in, if he can't get a go at number 10 because Jude Bellingham's ahead of him, or when Cole Palmer comes back potentially, maybe, just maybe, Thomas Tuchel wants to see him in a wide position. And we know Phil Foden prefers playing on the right if he's going to play wide and cut in on his left foot. But let's see. I think he's got options there now. But like Jay says, I'd be surprised if Anthony Gordon could play for England if he was involved. Maybe he'll come along for the ride, because he loves being part of this England squad, and Thomas Tuchel sees him as an important character off the pitch as much as an important player on it.
Rob, I don't think anyone's a bigger fan of Phil Foden than me. I love him as a player, but I do not want to see him playing on the left wing. I prefer someone else to play there, because Phil Foden, as much as he's quick, he's not going to get to the line to put crosses in for the likes of Kane, and I just feel like he's limited there. You have to play someone else in that position. Like you said, if they're both fit, then it's Rashford and Gordon, but I don't want Phil Foden playing on the left, because that's not his best position. His best position is as a number 10. When we see the best of Phil Foden, it's when I think he scored 27 goals and like 11 assists. He was pretty much playing as a 10 for Man City. That's what I need to see from Tuchel if he's going to select him, not out on the left wing.
Rob, how close is this to the final World Cup squad?
Oh God, that's a stinker of a question, Tom. I don't know. Look, I think there's players that are injured that will come back into the reckoning. I think you have to mention Cole Palmer, who's missed the last couple of international breaks, and I don't think you'll see Alex Scott, Adam Wharton, and Elliot Anderson all in the final World Cup squad. So it's clearly Thomas Tuchel is still looking at options here. But what I'd just go back to Jay and what he was saying. I think everybody agrees that Phil Foden's best position is number 10, but it's also Jude Bellingham's best position, and it's also Cole Palmer's best position. And those are 3 of England's best position. Don't you think so?
I don't think so. I think Jude Bellingham's a number 8. I think he's a box-to-box. I think he makes tackles, he arrives in the box, he gets back.
If you play him as number 8, if you play him as number 8, what do you do with Declan Rice?
6.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Declan Rice has been scoring goals for Arsenal, and he's been used entirely as a box-to-box midfielder. He's offering so much going forward. Tuchel says if you play him as a 6, you lose so much of his quality.
Yeah, I mean, but then you could play him, maybe in a 2 in midfield, like with one of these players, like you said, sitting down next to him and not going forward, and saying, Declan, go and join in. Or Declan, you sit, and then Bellingham, go and join in. But I don't think I mean, we see Bellingham play against Liverpool in the week, and he was getting forward. He started as, I mean, on the team sheet it said 2 up front, but obviously it was, 1 in the hole and then playing off Mbappe, and he didn't produce then. And he didn't play well. I like Jude Bellingham when he gets involved in the game, and I don't think he's his best position as a number 10.
The point I'm trying to make, though, is that we are absolutely blessed at number 10 more than any other position in this England squad, and potentially wide attacking areas as well. And the problem that England managers have had in the past is they've tried to crowbar these world-class players in to positions because they can't cope. They can't, fathom the idea of leaving one of the really big names out. And that's the problem Thomas Tuchel has got here. It used to be Gerrard, Scholes and Lampard. How do you play all of those three in the middle of England's midfield? Now you've got Phil Foden, you've got Jude Bellingham, you've got Cole Palmer when he's fit, you've got Morgan Rogers, who's been outstanding for England at number 10 in the last couple of international breaks. You've got Eberechi Eze. Where do you put him into the side when Noni Madueke comes back fit? Where do you fit all this attacking talent in? And I think that's the quandary for Thomas Tuchel. And what we'll see from now, is he going to throw the big names in with the big pedigrees? Or is he going to say, OK, I'm going to have to leave some of the big names out. I'm not going to start the big names because it doesn't work with the team dynamic.